3 months ago, I told you Temu and Shein were dead in America, and you guys all roasted me in the comments. Temu's not going anywhere. There's no nail in the coffin for Temu. Bro doesn't understand business. Well, France just declared war, and what they did was so insane, I literally had to pause the article to make sure that I was reading it right. 2 government ministers showed up at the airport, grabbed scissors, and personally started ripping open packages. But not 10, not 100, we're talking 200,000 packages in one day. And what they found, it was worse than anyone thought. But the packages were just the beginning, because France is about to do something that will literally make it impossible for these companies to exist in Europe. And if you're one of the people who said I was wrong, you're going to want to stick around for this one, because I'm about to show you exactly how Europe is about to finish what America started. Let's jump straight to November 6th, early morning. 2 French cabinet ministers drive to Charles de Gaulle Airport, the budget minister and the trade minister. But they don't go to an office. They go straight to the customs warehouse, and they do something I've never seen government officials do. They order customs agents to stop processing everything except for Shein packages. Everything else can wait. They want every single Shein delivery from the last 24 hours opened and inspected. Now normally, customs does random spot checks. Maybe 1 out of every 100 packages gets opened. But this was not a spot check. It was a raid. The ministers brought cameras, they brought journalists, and they started opening packages themselves on camera. 200,000 packages. Now the head of customs told reporters it would take an entire month to process them all, a month of work for 1 day of deliveries. And they were doing this very publicly, very deliberately. The budget minister is holding up products on camera, unauthorized cosmetics, dangerous toys, counterfeit goods, defective electronics that could start fires. Now she said previous inspections found that 80% of products from these platforms do not meet European safety standards. But they weren't just looking for dangerous products, they were building a legal case. Because the day before this airport raid, France had discovered something on Shein's marketplace that caused a political firestorm. Childlike sex dolls and weapons. Actual machetes and knives you could just order like you're buying socks. Now after that, the Prime Minister immediately filed legal action to block Shein's entire website in France. And they literally blocked the whole thing until Shein could prove every single product complied with French law. Now naturally, Shein went into full panic mode. They immediately suspended their entire marketplace in France and banned all third-party sellers. And they said they'd only sell their own branded clothing and nothing else. And then the executive chairman released a statement saying the fight against child exploitation is non-negotiable. And at this point, I'm watching this thinking, all right, this looks really bad for Shein. They'll pay some massive fines, clean up the marketplace, maybe the site gets blocked for a couple weeks, and then things go back to normal. But then France announced what they were doing next. And that's when I realized that this isn't about sex dolls or dangerous toys. This is about killing their entire business model. Let me give you the quick context of why this matters. 3 months ago, the US government killed something called the de minimis rule. Basically, packages under $800 could enter America completely duty-free. No taxes, no customs fees, nothing. And Temu and Shein built their entire US business on this loophole. Now, when the US ended it, I made a video saying that these companies were done. Their business model was dead. And the comments destroyed me. The most popular one, with a bunch of likes, said Europe won't touch these companies because they need cheap goods for their economy. This guy has no idea what they're talking about. And honestly, the logic made sense. Europe still had duty-free shipping for packages under 150 euros. If you can't sell to America anymore, you double down on Europe, and it was the obvious move. So I watched, and for months, it looked like I was completely wrong, because packages flooded into Europe. 4.6 billion packages in 2024 alone, which was double the year before. 12 million packages every single day, and 91% of them coming straight from China. Shein hit 146 million monthly users in the EU, and Temu was right behind them. And both companies were absolutely crushing it. And then, Shein made a move that seemed either brilliant or insane. On November 5th, they opened their first physical store, not in China, not in the US, but in Paris, France, the fashion capital of the planet. Now sure, there are some protesters outside screaming about labor practices and environmental damage, but the line to get in wrapped around the block and it looked like a massive victory. But just 1 week later, everything changed. Now fast forward to November 12th. The French Parliament starts debating Article 22 of the budget law. It's a proposal to tax every single package by €2 entering France from outside of Europe. Now when I first saw this, I thought, €2, that's nothing. Companies will just absorb the cost or pass it along to customers, whatever. But then I did the math and I understood exactly what France was doing. Let's say you order a €5 t-shirt from Shein. Now when you add €2, that €5 shirt now costs €7, which is a 40% increase. And suddenly you're thinking to yourself, why not just buy a shirt from H&M for €8? And the entire value proposition dies. Because no one buys from Shein because it's slightly cheaper. You're buying because it's so much cheaper that you don't care about quality or fit or shipping times. By the way, if you're interested in starting your own profitable online store, make sure you sign up for my free 6-day e-commerce mini course below. It's 100% free and I guarantee you'll learn a lot. And France isn't stopping at €2. Some lawmakers are proposing a €25 per package fee. Then that €5 shirt becomes €30, which basically kills the sale. Plus, France is pushing for an additional €5 environmental levy on fast fashion, rising to €10 by 2030, so potentially €12 in taxes on a €5 shirt. Now, the French Finance Ministry projects this will cause a 60% drop in package volume. And they're not trying to make money here, even though they estimate it'll generate €500 million in revenue. They're trying to make the business model mathematically impossible. And here's what makes this devastating. The EU planned to eliminate the €150 duty-free exemption in 2028, but France is doing this in 2026. They're jumping 2 years ahead and forcing everyone else to follow. Now, Temu and Shein immediately said, okay, fine, we'll route packages through Belgium and then truck them into France. Except France already thought of that. They went to the EU and said, you need to investigate Shein under the Digital Services Act right now, and the EU said yes. Germany announced they're investigating these platforms for antitrust violations. Italy just fined Shein €1 million for false environmental claims, and the EU Commission said Temu is already in breach of the Digital Services Act for not preventing illegal product sales. So this isn't just France anymore. This is coordinated and it's spreading. Now here's what everyone in my comments 3 months ago missed. This was never about whether Europe would do something. It was about when the pain would become impossible to ignore. So let me just walk you through what just happened to Shein in France in the last 6 months alone. They were fined €40 million from the competition agency for fake discounts. Another fine for misleading environmental claims, another for data violations. They've paid $191 million in fines just in France just this year. But they kept growing anyway because the business model still worked. And as long as customers could buy cheap products with free shipping and no duties, nothing else mattered. The fines were just the cost of doing business. Now the tax changes everything because now it's not Shein paying the price. It is every single customer on every single order. And you cannot run a volume business when the volume disappears. Think about what made these companies explode. It wasn't better products, it was better economics. They shipped directly from Chinese factories to European consumers, skipping the entire retail supply chain, skipping warehouses, skipping import duties, skipping everything. And that is how you sell a shirt for €5 and still make money. But that only works at massive scale with zero friction. The moment you add any friction at all, the model starts to break. Hey, just a quick break, and you need to hear this. Temu and Shein are dead, which means the playing field just got leveled. And if you want to dominate that field, you need to be around people who know how to win. Now imagine a room with 200 of the best e-commerce sellers in the world, 7- and 8-figure operators who actually share their secrets. That's the Seller Summit, my annual e-commerce conference. I handpick every speaker because they're in the trenches right now, and there's no theory, no fluff, just proven playbooks you can steal immediately. And if you're doing over 250K, there's a private mastermind where you'll meet the people who will 10x your business. We've sold out 9 years straight, so if you're serious about winning, you need to be there. Link is below for SellerSummit.com. Now, a €2 tax sounds small, but when your average order value is €15, that is a 13% price increase across the board, and they can't absorb it because their margins are already paper thin. And it's not just the tax, it's the inspections. Those 200,000 packages sitting at Charles de Gaulle Airport that will take a month to process, every day those packages sit there is another day customers are waiting. Another day they're thinking, why did I even order this? Shein's entire model is built on impulse purchases and fast delivery. You see something cheap, you click buy without thinking, it shows up in a week, you probably don't even remember ordering it. That is the dopamine loop that keeps people coming back. But if it takes a month to arrive because it's stuck in customs, that loop breaks as well, and the impulse dies. And then there's the legal exposure. France filed a criminal complaint for distributing child pornography. And that's not a regulatory slap on the wrist. That is a criminal investigation. Shein had to shut down their entire marketplace in France immediately, which means they can only sell their own branded clothing now. But the marketplace was their fastest growing revenue stream, and that's gone. So now you're running a business where costs are exploding because of taxes, delivery times are ballooning because of inspections, and revenue is collapsing because you shut down the marketplace, and every other country in Europe is watching France and thinking, we should do that too. And this is a death spiral, and we're only 3 weeks in. So what does this collapse mean for both sellers and shoppers? Let's start with the good news first, especially if you're a seller. Temu and Shein going down isn't just a headline. It is the end of a wildly unfair playing field, because for years, Chinese sellers were bypassing import duties, dodging tariffs, and flooding the market with ultra-cheap goods, while domestic businesses had to follow the rules and eat the costs. Now that loophole is finally closed, and for the first time in a long time, sellers have a level playing field again. No more racing to the bottom on price. No more losing customers to $2 knockoffs shipped from overseas. It is a reset, and one that favors sellers who focus on quality, service, and brand. Now for shoppers though, the story is different. If you love the thrill of ultra-cheap gadgets and $5 clothing, that era is ending. Shipping is slower, prices are rising, and the apps that once felt like shopping like a billionaire, it's just not delivering anymore. But maybe that's not such a bad thing, because when prices are too low to be real, someone's always paying for it. And in Temu and Shein's case, that someone was often the seller, the supplier, or the workers behind the scenes. So here's what I think happens next. France's €2 tax passes in the next couple of weeks. Other EU countries watch. When package volume drops 60% like France is projecting, Germany implements the same tax, then Italy, and then Spain. And by mid-2026, the entire EU has either individual taxes or the EU-wide duty elimination gets fast-tracked. Shein and Temu try to pivot premium quality products to justify higher prices, but it doesn't work because nobody believes them and their supply chain can't actually produce quality at scale. And by the end of 2026, one or both of these companies either exits Europe entirely or they're operating at 20% of their current volume and bleeding money. The US closed the loophole. Now Europe is closing theirs. And once both those markets are gone, there is nowhere left to hide. Now this story isn't over yet. It's just getting started. And if you want to see how this plays out, hit subscribe and make sure you watch this video here on exactly what I would do if I were to start an e-commerce business today from complete scratch.